just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. If you do nothing, your life doesn't stay the same. It gets worse. To stay sharp, we must always be growing, learning, and in pursuit of something greater than ourselves. That's what Truth Seekers is all about. When you think of simple secrets of the successful, there's nothing new we don't already know. This podcast is a reminder of the principles from which we tend to stray when life gets busy or when we get too hard on ourselves. Today's Truth Seekers discussion talks about the importance of staying sharp, even as we enter the latter stages of our professional career and into retirement. Though Coach Nick mentions he sees himself as retired right now, it's a great reminder that without a plan, without a meaningful existence, our physical, mental, and emotional health is liable to disintegrate. The driver of today's topic of wellness is Dr. Michelle Fritsch, a board-certified doctoral-trained health professional who has developed a process to help create a clear, rock-solid plan for long-term health, function, and fulfillment. She is a specialist in medication use in people over 60. She is founder of Retirement Wellness Strategies and co-founder of Propel Comprehensive Wellness, supporting a transition to health in retirement and beyond. She works with a broad definition of health: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social. She is also co-founder of Metapreneurs, providing support, innovation, and a place to thrive for healthcare innovators. We enjoyed this one. Come engage with us in this week's discussion with Dr. Michelle Fritsch. Right, welcome to another episode of Truth Seekers. We have Michelle Fritsch joining us today. Michelle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. We'd love to learn a little bit more about what you do. I see the word wellness and part of your company and your description. So share about what you do and then maybe talk a little bit more about wellness, if we can get a definition of wellness.
Absolutely. So I've been in healthcare my whole life. I'm a clinical pharmacist. And after several years in the more traditional roles in academia, I found a problem that I felt needed to be addressed. And that was the number of people who had been really successful in their careers, who then retired and their health plummeted. And over hundreds of those people, as I got to know them, I realized it was preventable. And almost always it was tied to their sense of who they are, which leads directly to wellness, who they are once that primary career ends. And so I help people identify that purpose in the next phase of life and find that health tends to track right along with it.
Yeah, very interesting. So would you say is tied directly to wellness? Is that was like an identity of who they are?
Yeah, it's sort of, I think we have a purpose in each phase of life. And if you've been a lawyer, your purpose in the next phase might be completely different. Maybe you're going to go out and do something for the environment, but you're going to take all of those skills and all that insight and all the things that you've collected and now apply it to something new, not as a full-time job, but as your sort of reason for being and getting up every morning in retirement.
And you found that there was a big correlation between the success and finally the retirement for that first successful career or that version of it. And then because there was no intention, or perhaps not as much intention as to the transfer to what am I going to do now? That then led to just not doing anything. And then there's like a slow erosion of the quality of life, which means not doing as much and therefore more sedentary, and then more and more erosion. Is that it?
That's part of it. The stress of it, the lack of loss of who you are, in some cases leads to a despair that tragically can end in suicide. In some people, it leads to divorce and real unhappiness in relationships because there was no planning for what that would look like together once the primary occupation ends. So a number of different episodes, a number of different scenarios I've seen where wellness just sort of dissipates when somebody makes that big transition. And so we get in front of it before it happens and make those plans for overall health and wellness as well as purpose. And when those go together, I'm finding people have a much better outcome.
Very interesting. I might quote Coach from a previous episode. Coach, I don't know if you remember saying this, but I'm sure you do. If we do nothing with our life, it doesn't stay the same. It gets worse. It actually gets worse. Like if you just sit there, there's that erosion. We have to be constantly challenging ourselves or living for something. And I think you have a really unique idea here that purpose, like we think purpose, we have to align our entire life with this purpose, but it almost sounds like it's in stages or it can change. And I have a couple of clients that struggle with that. With like, I don't know what my purpose is. And I love the quote, you don't necessarily have to have a purpose, but you have to serve a purpose. What's something that you can be a part of that feels greater than yourself? And that can change. It doesn't have to be the same thing throughout your entire life.
Exactly. And if you want them, I've got stories of people who in retirement, they're doing things completely different than what they did in their primary occupation. But you can see how those skill sets lent themselves to something completely new.
I love this. This is really cool. It's adding some layers of distinctions for me, Michelle. So thank you very much. And I love that quote, by the way, Coach. That was awesome. I often tell people that I'm retired because I think that the definition of what retirement means is the situation here, right? Because I think from a overall traditional version of retirement is you work crazy hard for years and years and years, and then now finally I can do nothing forevermore.
Yeah.
Right? But of course you can't do nothing. You have to do something. Otherwise what's the point for you being? And it's like working out. You spend 5 years working out, building muscles, feeling awesome, looking awesome, being strong. And then you take a year off training and go back to the gym and expect to do the same thing. It's like, it's not going to be there for you. It's going to dissipate. So I love the thought process, and like it's, what do you need in that moment? And how important, Michelle, is it to think about this as a continual dialogue somewhat in your mind, even if you're in the middle, let's say, of your current purpose?
I think it's important. I mean, one of the tools that I use, and I've got several tools that kind of help guide people through this rather than say, do it, because it's a little too much. But one of the tools has you walk back even to childhood. What were things that caught your interest?
Yeah.
What were things that you maybe even did? Maybe I played trombone for a while, and now I haven't been able to touch music in 30 years. And I really want to get back into that. The CEO of the last health system I worked for, he now fixes really high-end guitars. And he says that, he's enjoying that. In the process, he goes to all sorts of jam and, musicians getting together and playing kind of opportunities. He's learning more about sort of music theory along the way. And it's just enraptured him. He has so much fun with gathering these old, really high level guitars, making them work again, and then helping them find new homes, and completely nothing to do with administrator of a major health system.
It's just a testament to how things can change, right? It's still passion. I'm just passionate in a different way.
Exactly. It still gets him around a lot of other people. He's continuing to learn and grow. He's staying mentally active, socially active. Those are such core components. And you figure there's probably music way back in his background that he didn't get to do much with while he was running a major hospital. Mm-hmm. And now he can kind of relight that flame.
Sure. Can we pop back to something you said earlier? You suggested that part of the issue, if I can call it that, is when people stop working, there's also can be a disconnect in a marriage or your partner, because maybe I haven't got this right, but is it something to do with not being clear about why am I doing what am I doing and being intentional about what's there? And so you kind of get into this rhythm for decades sometimes, and then without even knowing that you're doing it, and not knowing that it's like you're feeling just that in that comfort zone, which I'm scared to death of, and I think everyone should be. And then so when that certainty gets pulled out of whatever that was, so even if it wasn't the best thing in the world, it's like it was some, that's the only thing they had, and there's just left with picking up the pieces. Am I getting that right? Like, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I've seen a number of different versions of how that goes, but in general, it seems like when people first meet and come together, you know, they're planning their whole lives and they're on the same page and they're really excited about that future.
Yeah.
And then they go through many years where they're just really busy and they don't even think about the fact that they're not talking about what comes next. And what I'm finding, and again, a lot of different individual scenarios, but when they get to that moment of retirement, they realize they've not talked about it in quite a while. And they've got different assumptions that are headed in different directions. And then they make a decision. Are we going to pull this back together and compromise and find a way forward? Or at a rate we've never seen before in our society, divorces over age 50 are on a sharp increase. And in general, I'm finding if I can get couples to talk about that 2 to 5 years before they retire and identify where the differences are, that gives them time to decide if and how they can get back on a similar page. And that doesn't mean you spend 24/7 together, but that you've got some shared interest and you've got your individual interests, but you understand and respect what those are, versus the surprise. I'm thinking of one person who worked incredibly long hours his entire career. And when retirement came, he told his wife and she said, "You're not going to be in this house." And that came as a shock. It wasn't of a hooray, finally we're going to be together. It was a very different response, and they've been navigating that and trying to figure that out in the about year since that retirement. And then another scenario of a couple that always talked about travel, but then by the time retirement came, some grandkids had been born and really didn't want to be away from the grandkids for extended periods, and she had actually become part of the care system of the grandkids. And so the 3 weeks to Europe became 3 days to the mountains, so that they could, you know, still maintain their childcare responsibilities. So things change in each of the lives, and that communication is just so important.
It's mad how that as communication is so important everywhere. The people that are close to us, we tend to can be worse at that communication where it's most important. You're doing some really, really impactful work, Michelle. It's so cool.
Thank you.
Because I've got lots of questions. And coach, for you a little bit as well, because you said earlier about some clients not going, I don't know what my purpose is, but just try to, how do you put it?
To serve a purpose.
Serve a purpose, yeah. And so I often find that there's resistance in saying anything at all, because once they've said it, well, that means they've got to follow through on what that particular thing is. But it's a moving target, right? But it's like there has to be something to move towards. It's just having a direction doesn't mean you can't change, but you have to have something to move. Otherwise, it's just round and round.
And right, you don't have to commit to one thing and say that's going to be my purpose forever and ever and ever. But even if you find that one thing that engages you for a season, and then along the way, you know, especially once you're no longer working full time, you can explore all sorts of things. But like, I think this one will make you smile. An executive in the automotive industry who didn't really want to even think about this, but went through the process and realized how much what's happening to the environment is really bothering him. And he's an engineer by training. He's been more in the sort of executive roles for years, but he's an engineer. And so he went to, I won't say the name of the store, but one of the stores that sells such things, and got some solar panels. And he went out on his back deck and has been adding to his little solar panel farm and experimenting with what he can run off of the solar panels and how much energy is created and how much he can share that with the neighbors. And he's just in experiment mode, but it has him really excited. He's got, who knows, probably 2 or 3 years before retirement, but he's just engaging in this area and experimenting. And he's looking for a board of directors that serves environmental issues that he can join, where he'll get sort of some insider knowledge and just explore if this is where he wants to be. But it's caught his interest, and it has made the concept of retirement feel more comfortable because it seems exciting versus something to dread.
Coach and I talk so much about making things easy. Like when we start to have, or when you start to have your conversation, Michelle, it can maybe feel overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what would I even do. I think our life's experience point us in a direction that we intuitively know. I'm just wondering if you might share, like, what is a question that you could ask, or somebody could ask themselves? Maybe they're in that sweet spot of 2 to 5 years out from retirement and they're thinking about this. What could you ask, or what could you have them ask themselves to get them thinking about what that might be for them?
It's a great question. And I think it in large part, it comes down to, in our lifetimes, in our careers, we've got the things that really energize us and make us excited that we are anxious to do. And then we've got the things that we have to do, but aren't as exciting. So start by aligning what are the types of activities that really inspire you. And then what are some interests that you've identified along the way that maybe you, at that moment, you couldn't stop and really pursue that, especially if it's an interest that just really nags at you. I think of it as breaks your heart, something that really nags at you, and you recognize somebody has to step up and help us all in that area. And I get so excited about that I'm willing to dive in and see if I've got a place within that particular issue.
I like that answer, because that's the example right there. Make it easy, and not easy like it's simple, but it's usually something that we wish other people would be doing.
Right.
But if we were to take full ownership of that, what does it feel like to us? And we always know that answer. Those people know that answer. And like you said, like, what are those interests? We know the answers to those questions, but we don't allow ourselves time to go there for whatever reason. We have our full-time job, or we have these responsibilities. I like to ask the question, if there are no barriers, what would you do? Like, what are those things? If you could just have it your way, what would it be? And if you can get them to a place to play in that environment, some great, interesting things come out that are in alignment with what they already know to be true.
Yes. Here's my favorite analogy. If you're driving your car and your windshield's all muddy, you're not going to push the accelerator, or hopefully you're not, because you can't see where you're going. But if we could clean your windshield and you loved what was in front of you and you couldn't wait to get there, then you're going to push the accelerator. And that seems to be the difference. When I work with people who are like, yeah, I don't know if I even want to retire, several years away. Once we clear the windshield and they find those areas of passion that they want to be part of, then I've had people move up closer their retirement by as much as a year. Now I can't wait to get there.
Big difference. And Coach and I love imagery. I get this image of somebody being stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
You got to go in reverse and forward a little bit. And that's that rocking back and forth of like just testing out, if you've never contemplated this before, or if it's coming on you like 100 miles an hour, like, oh my gosh, I don't know. Just start thinking about things, right? Just throw some ideas out there. And that's that back and forth. Meanwhile, maybe some mud's getting kicked on the windshield, but once that gets clarified for you, then turn those wipers on and see where you're going.
Absolutely. You bring up a good point. There are some people who have the luxury of planning their retirement, and there are some people that, for whatever reason, their company no longer needs their services. It's also a really great time to work with someone, rather than that feel like a punishment or a huge disappointment. If we can turn that into an opportunity, then the outcome, again, the overall wellness is completely different.
Yeah, it's almost like have somebody help you push your car out of the mud. I know I saw Coach smile with my analogy, so I'm curious how he's going to build on that.
I was thinking like a mud bath where I'm kind of sitting there relaxed in my bath of mud, where I'm, it's not like the best thing, but I'm kind of comfortable, right? And then around me is maybe some fog, so I can't really see what's there. So I'm like, wow, I know that there's could be better things out there, but I'm kind of comfortable in my mud. Why would I bother trying getting out? It's kind of cold out there. I just, gosh, I even see that for super successful people making like multiple seven figures a year, just going, I don't know if I want to retire. Like, I don't, like, I'm just trying to get some sizzle in my life each week. Now I meet the client, that's fun. I want to play golf maybe once more a week. Just thinking, so they're thinking now and the next step rather than from the where I want to go and then back. And that's the difference I find a lot of time. When you can, most people start with like, okay, what's logical of what I can get based on what I know? But screw logical, right? You can get anything you want. So start at the end, like how would you have it if anything is possible? It's I also find you've got to honor as well what it's taken to get to that point in the first place, because that's not nothing, you know, it's like multiple years, multiple decades of getting to that point, lots of patterns being built to do that. And so to ask to have a big change is a big thing. And so that's a balance to be had as well. I'm curious, Michelle, I know we haven't got too much time left here. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that you said that you work with people that are tends to be really successful, then they make the move, and it's catching them in a space. What would you say to people that, or what happens with people that perhaps aren't in that? Because you started to lean on the people that expectedly get into retirement, right? And so what if people don't have the luxury, if you will, of making that choice and having a stepping stone and having to continue? Is that a different perspective? Is that a different approach?
It is different. It's different in that I feel like time is of the essence. If someone is tossed into retirement almost against their will, time is of the essence so that they don't have that downward slide and see it as a negative, but catch them early so that we can identify what can they do now to bring back that sense of purpose and importance, because that is I've worked with some people who their position ended and they took that as such a personal affront, such a negative statement to who they are as an individual, that can lead to that really rapid health decline. And so if you know, and if anybody is listening to this and knows someone who's about to lose their job for whatever reason, let's start now, because I don't want to see them, reach that point where we can't turn it back.
This is such an interesting topic and conversation, wellness around the end of a career. This is super cool because it's so related to what we do and passion and purpose and mission-driven life. And it's just people maybe figuring that out in different stages. And I just love the concept that it can be different things. It doesn't have to be one thing throughout the rest of your life. And you can start right now to think about that.
Can I give you my favorite story?
Please, yes.
Gentleman that's an airline executive, way up in the airlines, and his family wants him to retire, but he just didn't really want to. And so he actually read the book that I wrote and talked about some things. And he realized that he recognizes that when children are born, they need that nurturing, they need the skin time. And that helps further develop their neurocognitive abilities. And he recognized that there are families that have neonates, those itty bitty babies that are born early that stay in the hospital for an extended period. And the family's got to work, they've got to do other things. So this airline executive goes to the neonatal ICU and skin times neonates when the families can't be there. He talks about how incredibly relaxing that is compared to his job. And he knows that he's making a difference in the life of those children.
Purpose can be therapeutic at the same time. That's so meaningful. I love that.
It has nothing to do with airlines, except maybe those little babies will grow up to be pilots or something.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you mentioned neurocognitive. That's such a topic that we love to discuss on Truth Seekers and as pro advisor coaches. we'll start to grab some takeaways. So mine will be, Coach, I think of, and Michelle, I believe you started to engage with the mind scan. This is a bit unique because we live in this relator, doer, thinker understanding of how our thoughts are categorized. And so often we talk about on the show the external and process, procedure, and people and actions. I think today's conversation relates to the internal, and Coach will know what I'm talking about, and I'm sure you'll see this moving forward. But the bottom middle is our role awareness and the roles that we play and how we identify ourselves. And I think it's so important to be aware of that through the stages of our life. And my takeaway today is that it can change, and that hasn't really dawned on me before, although maybe I knew that intuitively, but to hear you say it just provided that much more clarity. So thank you for that. But the roles that we play change throughout our life. And the most obvious example might be like entering into fatherhood or something like that. But also it can be in alignment with purpose in what we do for our work. And it just makes so much sense to me. So thank you for clarifying that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Coach Nick, some sort of takeaway from today's conversation.
Some great wrinkles and distinctions and underscoring of those concepts and thought processes. That's my favorite, right? Because my favorite is to take something a concept that I'm already familiar with and just give it that one extra underscore, or that one level deeper, right? That next level of clarity. And so I love the everything around purpose of being clear that whatever you're doing right now doesn't have to be everything. It's just what you're doing right now, but it does have to be something, right? And otherwise you will go around in circles, and you have to be intentional about what's there. It can change. And also a reminder as well to come back to asking the questions that we're so familiar to asking because we live doing this. But we've got to show people that we've got to remember that most of the time people aren't asking these types of questions. So we've got to be deep in okay, if you could have any other way you wanted to have it, if you could wave a magic wand, right? If there were no barriers, if you could start with the end in mind, like, and those types of things are so important because people aren't generally thinking in those perspectives. So thank you so much, Michelle and Coach, for distinctions today.
Awesome stuff, Coach. And Michelle, something, we'll give you the final word, a plug if you want for your business or a takeaway from today's conversation. I will ask a favor. We always talk about books and usually what people are reading, but whenever we have an author on here, we'd love to hear about your book and the title of your book.
I would love to share that with you because it really kind of ties it all together. It was years of writing blogs and exploring this area that led to me leaving academia and traditional practice to start retirement wellness strategies. And it was recognizing how preventable this was. So you've got people with great insight, great skills, can have such a big impact on society, and we're losing them. And with a little prevention, they have those years of impacting all of us in a positive new way. So this is called Preventive Maintenance for a High Mileage Life.
Love that.
It's an easy to read book with just a lot of little nuggets and a lot of key questions that challenge you to think through these things, ideally prior to retirement.
Awesome stuff. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today. This is a very intriguing conversation. I'm sure it'll resonate with a lot of people. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction. So please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links. Links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.